Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask an Author. I'm so excited today because I have a very special guest from Adelaide, Catherine Bauer. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me and including me on your channel.
I am so excited to find out about your latest book. Can you tell me a little bit about where you got the idea from?
Sure. Well, look, I had written a book with Big Sky Publishing it was put out a couple of years ago, and it was called Dreaming Soldiers. So it's about Australia's World War One diggers, really, who went to the front and served. So it was a story about that, and it did quite well. It received a Speech Pathology Australia Award, which was a lovely unexpected surprise. But on the back of that, Big Sky actually came to me and asked me would I consider doing a piece on Len Waters, who was Australia's first First Nations fighter pilot, and he served in World War II. And they were interested in Len's story as part of their Australia Remembers series that Alison Patterson's already done a couple of books. So this is going to be the third in the series and we come out next month.
That is amazing. And did you enjoy the research aspect of it?
Oh, look, I did. It really spoke to my my journalistic roots. So I started my working life as a cadet journalist and progressed on to features writer and political journalist. So of course, through that, research, I honed my research skills and was always looking into something. But I've always loved Australian history and all sorts of history, really. So it really tied those two interests together very much.
Absolutely. And do you tend to be a bit of a plotter or a bit of a pantser when you're writing your stories?
Look, for me, it's always, and I don't know again if it's journalistic training, that when you're on your way back from a story back to the office and you're sort of writing it in your head as you go, but it kind of comes together in my head and then I start writing as I go, and that for me seems to work.
Absolutely. I'm always having conversations with my characters in my head.
Yes. Yeah, and in fact, the character in Dreaming Soldiers, I had a dream and woke up and he was fully formed in my head, and which was really rare for me. But when you have those middle of the night brilliant idea and you wake up in the morning, it's like, what was that again? Yeah, that's how I work.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I used to not be as strict with myself as what I am now, but I think now that I'm writing longer form books, I think you just got to find what works for you and just do it.
Definitely. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about the book, what you discovered while you were doing the research and what you decided to focus on as part of this particular story.
Well, really, it follows Len's life. Len was born on an Aboriginal mission in 1924. So, of course, at the time, missions were set up under the White Australia policy, and it was all about protectionism and segregation. But Len's family, Len was the fourth of 11 children, and his parents really wanted the kids to have a traditional or a white education, but also felt that they could still value and their First Nations roots, and so they really wanted their kids to be, reasonably independent. And the parents eventually moved the family away from the mission life, and they moved to Queensland, to Nindigully, and bought their own home, and Len's dad was a shearer and a sort of land worker, and Len went off to school. Had always been completely fascinated with flight, whether it be, you know, the eagles or that flew overhead in where he grew up, or loved watching the elders throw their boomerangs, and really studied what they did to make them really effective and fly further and longer, and decided fairly early on in his life that he really wanted to learn to fly aircraft. But he went off to school, and his schooling really ended at 13. So the fact that he made it into the RAAF was a feat in itself, which I found amazing, because he really was up against it in his early years, not just prejudice but lack of education. So a lot of the book deals with that, and his determination to overcome those barriers, and then we follow him through into his career path through the RAAF, and eventually to New Guinea, or near New Guinea, where he served, and then his life afterwards, which sadly he didn't get to achieve his dreams of becoming a commercial pilot, because, again, as in Len's words, he said that as soon as he took off his uniform, he just went back to being another black fella. So there was obstacle after obstacle put in his way, and he became a shearer and a sort of itinerant worker, really, which wasn't great. And he died in the early 90s, and it was lovely to see, although he didn't get to see it, but he was then included on postage stamps, and parks and gardens and streets and public buildings were named in his honour, because by then, of course, Australia had moved on, you know, a reasonable way, and he did finally get the recognition that he deserved, but he didn't get to see it. But his family did, and they're very proud of him.
That's amazing. Was there anything while you were conducting your research that either really surprised or really shocked you that you didn't know before you started doing that?
What was reinforced for me, I think, Michelle, was the prejudice that existed, and it was something that I really discovered also with the other book that I did, was that, you know, First Nations Australians weren't recognised in the Constitution. You know, they came under the Flora and Fauna Act. They certainly did not have equal rights, but when it came to serving in the war, they were accepted. The Defence Forces and government turned a bit of a blind eye, because they needed personnel to serve and help in the effort. But, you know, when they came back, it was back to normal, back under the carpet, know your place, which really, and is piked my sense of, you know, injustice, and that is really sad. I think that the way that it happened. So in some small way, if I can help shed some light and celebrate the contribution that people like Len made, then that's great.
That's absolutely amazing. This is such an important story, I think, for kids to read as well. And when you picture kids reading this story, and even adults, what do you hope is the message that they get from reading this book?
I think that, you know, beyond the you know, the historical knowledge and insights, and the, you know, political sort of reconciliation stuff, I think it's about the value of hard work and following your dreams and following your passions, because if you can do something that where your talents lie, or you can, if you follow your dreams, then eventually, some way, it might not be exactly the way you think it's going to be, but you will eventually get there. And Len knew that he wanted to do this, and he just worked at it and worked at it. He did have to work harder than a lot of the other recruits because of the lack of education, but he sat up at night and studied. So yeah, I hope that people will, and young readers, older readers will get that message, that pursue your dream. And I know it's a bit of a hackneyed one, but it's true. I've pursued my writing goals ever since I was sort of about 8. I knew that I wanted to be a writer, and I was thinking in those days of, because I loved the old Enid Blytons and all those fabulous books. I thought, I want to write these books, and I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and so but I eventually became a journalist. So it wasn't originally the way I thought it would be, my writing life. And then I had a family and kids and stuff, and thought, oh, I'll never write a book. And then, now decades later, I've had a couple of books published, and it might have been a lot later in my life than I thought, but it happened. So
how did that work? How did you transition from journalism into writing fiction?
Right. Well, look, I think I'd always written just because it was something I enjoyed, and so I always had a little story ticking around in my head or something. And when my children were quite little, you'd make up the bedtime stories and stuff. And I think one of the boys said, "Oh, you should write this down." And, as your kids do, they love everything that you do. But I got brave, and I thought, I'm going to give this a crack. And then all the rejections started, and I thought, oh. But with the rejections, came some really useful feedback, and I thought, wow, they've actually taken the time to give me some feedback, and I improved my writing, because it is a very different writing style to what I was used to as a journalist. And yeah, eventually got a couple of manuscripts accepted within about 6 months of each other, and thought, oh my God, I can't believe this. So yeah, it was just lots and lots of persistence, and flexing my muscle and making it stronger, and getting to know my own style.
That's amazing, and it really is a story that does get echoed a lot, especially those of us who are starting to be in this profession after we've had kids. And
yes.
It's not something that we were told when we were young that you could actually do as a job. It was always, oh, that's a nice hobby.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
But now, you're right. It does take bravery and persistence. It doesn't matter what age you start, I guess.
No.
But especially trying to break through all of those stereotypes that you grow up with. I think, yours is a story of bravery in itself. So you're the perfect person to write this story of overcoming all of those obstacles as well.
Oh, thank you.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors of all ages who are watching?
Look, I think, get to know, write about what you love and what you're interested in. Write regularly if you can. I know that it can be hard to find the time to accommodate your writing, but even if you set aside a bit of writing time a couple of times a week, if you can't do it every day. But I think that getting into a flow and a rhythm is really important. So not a huge amount of advice other than write regularly, write what speaks to your heart. And if you are the sort of person that thrives on feedback and needs feedback, and join a writers group, that's something that I haven't done as yet, and mainly it's because I'm fairly time poor, but I would probably benefit from.
I think it doesn't matter what level you are in your writing career, just having, I guess, a a community around you who supports
Yes.
you, and feedback's great, but it's also just the we're all in this together
Yes.
notion as well, that we're,
Yeah.
we all have a common goal, and there's so many things I think in this industry that correlate to a community of people who can learn from each other but also give at the same time. So
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. So when does the book come out?
Next month, September the 6th.
September the 6th, awesome. And if people watching would like to get a copy, where would you suggest would be the best place to go to get a copy?
Well, it will be available in all good bookstores, and but also Amazon and Booktopia.
Excellent. And it's published by Big Sky Publishing, isn't it?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll pop a link in the comments, so anybody wanting to purchase a copy of the book can just click on there and grab their copy. And if somebody wanted to contact you and talk to you a little bit more, either about your journey or ask you some questions, what would be the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Well, thanks, Michelle. Through my author Facebook page, which I'll flick on the details for you. But yeah, I'm always happy to chat to people anytime if it's useful or they've got questions.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there's so many people watching who would have a lot of questions for you and want to pick your brain. So that's very, very gracious of you to be able to open yourself up to those questions like that. So I really appreciate it. Kevin, thank you so much. I have loved chatting with you today. And is there anything coming up that we should know about?
Well, I'm always working on something. So I do have a couple of manuscripts under submission. So fingers crossed. I don't want to jinx myself, because
we won't jinx it, but I'm sure we'll be catching up again for another chat about an upcoming book very soon. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much. I've loved talking to you today.
Thank you so much. And and again, it's such an important story, and you really are a very very honourable person who can share this story with such dignity. So thank you again for sharing that behind the scenes with us today, and good luck on the launch of the book.
Fabulous. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Catherine.
Bye.
Bye.